Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Jerusalem, Israel, and we continue with Perkei de Rabbi Eliezer. Chapter 35d, this is concluding chapter 35, and this one is called the Foundation Stone. Hallu et Adonai kol goyim shabechu kol haomim ki gavar alenu chasdo ve'emet Adonai le'olam hallelujah. So we pick up right where we left off last week. Jacob leaves his father's house on his way to Haran. God stops him because he wants to talk to him, so he sets the sun as Jacob is right where he needed to be, Temple Mount. He created a barrier around his head with 12 stones, and then he laid down to sleep. Now the gates of heaven opened, and a ladder which was situated on the ground went up all the way to the heavens, as the archangels or ministering angels, Michael and Gabriel, were finally going home after a 138-year stint on earth. And then as they were ascending, they called the rest of their heavenly entourage to come and take a look at the face of Jacob, the face that is upon the throne of God. As a result, as these two were ascending, the rest of the heavens were descending. In fact, God himself began to descend at his presence, the Shekhinah, as the Shekhinah stood over him. The last words we read last week were, "And the Holy One, blessed be he, showed him 4 kingdoms, reigning and falling." Okay, so that's a recap of last week. Let's continue. So 1, he showed him the minister of the kingdom of Babylon ascend 70 rungs of the ladder and descending. He showed him the minister of the kingdom of Medo-Persia, ascend 52 rungs and descend. He showed him the minister of the kingdom of Greece ascend 180 rungs and descend. And he showed him the minister of the kingdom of Edom ascend and not descend. So these are obviously the years that these kingdoms reigned, particularly over Israel, had an influence over Israel in one way or another. So you understand each rung is the number of years that they would reign, right? We also understand that this text by Rabbi Eliezer the Great was written over 2,000 years ago. He was the rabbi of Rabbi Akiva, okay? Rabbi Akiva witnessed the destruction of the Second Temple. Rabbi Akiva passed away in 135 CE, and he was 120 years old. So, again, this was written down likely 2,000 plus years ago. While Edom, was still ruling in Israel at the time. In other words, right here, this is a prophecy that we got over 2,000 years ago saying that Rome, would be in control for who knows how long. He did not show him the end, right? 2,000 years later, here we are. Just about. So our text says that there's no end to Edom in sight, meaning what Jacob saw, but it doesn't mean there's no end. Obviously, we know that there's an end. We learned all about it. When Israel rises, Edom falls, and so on. We know that Edom will fall when Israel rises, and what did Babylon try and do to Israel? Remove us from the land. What did Persia try to do to Israel? Have us assimilate. What did Greece try to do to Israel? Remember, Nebuchadnezzar removed us from the land and to keep us there as slaves. Then, afterwards, after the Persians took over, although we were kind of second-class citizens, nevertheless, we read in the Purim story the assimilation that began to take place. What did Greece try to do to Israel? Remove the Torah from our midst. That's why it's called the darkness, because you could be first-class citizens among us, but don't learn Torah, become like a Greek, right? And what has Rome tried to do way back when until this very day? Rewrite our history, have us done away with, pervert our Torah by spewing out the New Testament. And we also have learned many a time that the ministering angel of Esav, Edom, Rome, Christianity, and the Western world is Satan himself. That's who Jacob wrestled against. Which is why Jacob had to face him. And guess what? He won. We know this. They call Jebus God, right? But he's not God. It's just a man who allowed Satan to become him, as we have spoken of this in depth in our Calling All Sparks series, in the teaching titled Yeshu and the other is The Secret of Mashiach ben Yosef. Very much related. Which is what we discussed back then, is what Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer is discussing here. And he showed him the minister of the kingdom of Edom ascend and not descend. Why did Jacob not see the fall of Edom? Because it wasn't time for him to know the date. As today, no one knows until we will, right? Although Jacob did see the end before he was about to pass, but again, that was taken from him. We learned that in the end of Genesis. When it said, and Israel gathered his sons around and said, come gather around me and I'll tell you what's going to happen to you at the end of days. In other words, I'm going to give you a clock. But then the Israel was taken away. In other words, the super spiritual part, and he was only given, and Jacob was speaking to his sons. That prophecy was taken away because we can't have that written down. Like I said, the only place that this is written in the entire Tanakh, if you know exactly where even to start counting from, is in the book of Daniel. But really, nobody knows. And those that know, they definitely don't share it. Okay? So if people say, I know when this is going to happen, no, they don't. Because how many videos have we seen like that? People giving dates and they're wrong. And yet they're still around. Okay. So he showed him the minister of the kingdom of Edom ascend and not descend, saying, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will liken myself to the Most High. Isaiah 14 verse 14. Still want to bow down and worship a not God? To which Jacob answered him and said, but into the netherworld shall you be brought down to the bottom of the pit. Verse 15, to which the aftermath and the existential crisis of billions of people will come about like this. Those who see you shall look at you, shall gaze earnestly at you. Is this the man who caused the earth to quake, who wrought havoc among the kingdoms? The man, not a god, the man. Verse 16, to which the Holy One, blessed be he, said, if you go up like an eagle, and if you place your nest among the stars, from there I will bring you down, says the Lord. Obadiah or Obadiah 1:4. And you're wondering, wait, isn't he speaking of Babylon in Isaiah, right? Because it starts off, verse 14, speak to the king of Babylon. I hope that after everything that we've learned, you understand that Babylon and Rome, they are connected, and Edom, yes? From the primordial evil to the longest and most powerful standing invisible empire the world has ever or never seen. Rome didn't die, neither did Nazi Germany. I mean, you don't see how they're connected, right? They have the golden eagle. It started with Rome, continuing with the Nazis. Who's got the golden eagle today? The land of the free and the home of the what? Okay. So Nazis didn't die, Romans didn't die. They just changed their look. They rebranded themselves, becoming more, socially acceptable. Psalms 127. And again, we're not talking about the America that with the good Americans that they fought for. Look what's happening right now in the country. Now you're seeing Rome. This is what's happening. This is that filth. Psalms 127. Remember, O Lord, for the sons of Edom, the days of Jerusalem, those who say, raise it down to its foundation. O daughter of Babylon, we just said Edom, Babylon, who is destined to be plundered, praiseworthy is he who repays you your recompense that you have done to us. That's Israel. Praiseworthy is he who will take and dash your infants against the rock. As harsh as that is, I mean, if you look at what has been done to Israel over the past 25, 26, 2700 years, okay, we know that what goes around comes around. Lamentations 4, rejoice and be glad, O daughter of Edom, who dwells in the land of Uz. Upon you shall the cup pass. You shall become drunk and vomit. The punishment of your iniquity is complete, O daughter of Zion, right? He will no longer send you into exile, but your iniquity, O daughter of Edom, he shall punish. He will reveal your sins. Everything behind the scenes, everything that you've done, the way you've manipulated the world over the last 2,000 plus years, Oh yeah, everyone is going to see it. Everyone. Anyway, we good? Great. I hope so. Anyway, let's continue. Jacob arose early in the morning with great fear. The word is pachad. And said, the house of God is in this space. Yes, place, but again, to emphasize last week's teaching, space. As it said in Genesis 28:17, and he was frightened and he said, how awesome is this place? Manora hamakom, the place, the space, is this space. This is none other than the house of God. And this is the gate of heaven, the house of God, the gate of heaven. Why did Beit Elohim, literally the house of God. So again, this Beit El, but Beit Elohim, Beit is the house of. Why did Jacob use the term fear, pachad, and vayera vayomar ma nora hamakom hazeh, right? Vayera, nora, which essentially means dread. Chesed for Abraham, pachad for Yitzchak, emet for Yaakov. This is their calling card, if you will. Abraham's chesed, loving kindness, grace, giving. Isaac was called Pachad Yitzchak. We pray about it. We ask for Pachad Yitzchak, right? What happened? Why Pachad Yitzchak? We'll talk about it. And the seal of Jacob, which is, in other words, the title for Jacob is Emet, truth, and that's the seal of God. So where exactly is Jacob at this moment? We'll tie this in. Upon the very altar which his father Isaac was bound. Not necessarily upon that altar, but again, we're talking about like right around it. Because the altar that Abraham built specifically over there for Isaac, or that he reestablished from the days of Noah, for Isaac, it wasn't massive like it was in the temple. So you didn't necessarily have to be on the altar, but on the space where the entire altar would be during the first temple. That's what we're talking about. So when I say on the altar, it's within that space, not necessarily, made a bed for himself out of stones. Okay, so that's the very place where the altar would be when the temple would stand. Now we've discussed that when Isaac was bound and died upon the altar, different variations, but we know that even for a split second, his neshama left his body. He saw the same flaming lion upon the altar that would later consume the offerings during the first temple. Furthermore, he went up to the heavens, because he died, right? And he saw behind the scenes of the fabric of reality, and he feared greatly. Now, a lot of times people will die, depending on how high your neshama is, you will go up. And, we've heard a lot of accounts of people who died, they come back, and the things that they saw, incredible things, right? But Isaac, who just went against the very nature that God gave him to become chesed, meaning to give himself, because Isaac is gvura. It is the opposite of his nature. That's what happened there with the binding of Isaac and Abraham. Abraham had to take on the attribute of gvura. Isaac had to take the attribute of chesed. That was the only way it would work. In other words, that's great that I'm giving you all these inclinations. Now you have to go against your entire being to serve God, and they obviously passed with flying colors. So because Isaac was who he was and he died a complete perfect tzaddik, he went to the highest heights of heaven. And and what did he see there? He saw everything that happens behind the scenes, right? Behind the scenes of the fabric of reality. He feared greatly. And why? Because Isaac saw the consequences of not only our actions, but also our words, thoughts, even intent behind the deeds that we do. Let's say if I say a blessing on something and I'm thinking about something else. You understand that's a sin, right? A tikkun needs to be made for that, because it says whenever you make a blessing, any kind of blessing, without the proper intent, it's like a body without a soul. You understand? And an account needs to be made for that. So Isaac saw all the things that happen when we do what we're not supposed to do or don't do things properly. We'll have to give a complete account for everything, and as a result, he became the aspect of Gevurah, judgment. That's when he established it, right? Just like Abraham was a giver, chesed, Isaac was the boundaries of said giving. So Abraham mastered the positive commands, Isaac mastered the negative commands. Jacob, having the best of both worlds, mastered them both and became Tiferet, splendor. Now, this is not to say that Abraham did not master the negative commands, meaning the thou shalt nots, right? Don't do this, don't do that. The positive commands, do this, do that, right? Abraham kept the complete Torah, so did Isaac. But again, we're talking about the tikkunim that were done and the attributes that were given to these individuals by God. So Jacob was always destined to receive the purest of chesed and the purest of gevurah, like we know that Abraham first bore Ishmael, who got the garbage, and then Isaac bore Esau first, who got the garbage, right? So that's why Jacob got the best of both. Excuse me. But again, make no mistake, like we said, the patriarchs, they all kept the Torah, all the commandments. It wasn't like this was his strength and this was his weakness. This was his inclination, this was his inclination. That's what we're talking about. But according to their nature, meaning how God made them with their own strengths, weaknesses, and inclinations, each one had to conquer said nature and master the other side. The pinnacle of this trial was the binding of Isaac, of course, as Abraham had to take on the role of Gevurah, while Isaac had to take on the role of Chesed. You get the point. So when we read verse 16, that says, and Jacob awakened from his sleep, and he said, indeed the Lord is in this place, and I did not know. Listen. Vayaketz Yaakov mishnato vayomer, achen yesh Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, in this place, ve'anochi lo yadati. Anochi is another name for the Shekhinah. Just like Anochi Hashem Elohecha, I am the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Anochi Hashem Elohecha, asher hotzeticha me'eretz Mitzrayim mibeit avadim. But Jacob was caught off guard at the immense power of this place that had been hidden, right? It's revealed only when everything is in place. In this case, it was when Jacob the righteous was laying his head to rest, because God specifically said, okay, listen, I need you to take a nap right here. Sun goes down, let's turn out the lights. Later on, it was when the temple was built. But today, do you think people feel the power there even today? No, you don't feel that power there, obviously. The gate is only open, allowing the flow of abundance when there is something to catch, filter, and distribute the power throughout Israel and the world, that being the temple, right? When the temple is there, that's when you got the right fixture on the bottom over here and everything flows. We continue with Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. From here you can learn that anyone who prays in this place, meaning Temple Mount, specifically the place of the temple in Jerusalem, it says, it is as if he prayed before the throne of God, because that's where it is. We can see this in 1 Kings 8, when Solomon is praying before the people to God at the dedication of God's house, right? And now, God of Israel, please let your word come true, which you spoke to your servant David, my father. But will God indeed dwell on the earth? Right? Behold, the heaven and the heaven of heavens cannot contain you. Infinite, everywhere, everything. God is beyond the space that he gave us. Much less this temple that I have erected, he's saying. Solomon is stating the obvious. Does God need a house on earth, one made of wood and stone, as they say? Which is the same point that Christians try and make whenever, they want to say, okay, I'm the temple. God doesn't need a house of wood and stone. Okay, sure, great question. So rightfully so, Solomon had to state the obvious in hopes that God would not only answer his prayer, but keep the word that God swore to David his father. And you shall turn toward your servant's prayer and to his supplication, O Lord my God, to hearken to the song and to the prayer that your servant is praying before you today. It's not only about the building, because it is a building after all, yes, but rather it's about obedience to the word of God and prayer that he answers. That your eyes may be open towards this house night and day, towards the place which you said. This is why it's important to know. God told this to Israel in the wilderness. So now Solomon is going back to God and saying, listen, I know you're infinite, and I know you are everywhere and everything in all of reality and all of the worlds and all of the realities. I built you a house. Why would you come here? Why would you come here? Because towards the place which you said, my name will be there. To listen to the prayers that your servant will pray towards this place is very simple and very smart. The reason This isn't even an argument, is because God himself said, from the place where my name will be. El ha-makom, God said. Is Jacob not in this very makom? You see? Okay, that throws away that argument, doesn't it now? And you shall listen to the supplication of your servant and of your people Israel, that they will pray towards this place, and you shall hear in heaven your abode, and you shall hear and forgive. That's why it's called Ha-Levanon, the Levanon, the house of whitening, right? Not the White House, which does the opposite, the house of whitening, because sins cannot just be dismissed. They have to turn from red to white. We didn't choose the spot. God did. And it was God who said that this is where he wants his house, and I dare any fool to say otherwise. Can't argue with the word. So again, why this spot? PDE continues, because this is where the gate of heaven is. And it is an opening to hear prayers. This is also known as the gates of righteousness, Sha'arei Tzedek, in Psalms 118:19. Pitchuli Sha'arei Tzedek abobam odeya. Open for me the gates of righteousness, I shall enter them and thank God, said David. Prayer goes up, abundance comes down, but it was always up to us to keep this channel open. David was really the one who connected Malchut, kingdom, with Yesod. Yesod is the opening. Malchut is what catches it. And Jacob returned to gather the stones, and he found them all turned into one stone. And he set it up for a pillar in the midst of the place, a makom. You see, when Jacob woke in the morning, he realized that he took from the rocks of the altar where his father was bound. And so he hurried to place them back where he found them, right? He had the dream. He realized, whoa, what am I sleeping on? Let me put this back because that's a holy spot. When he noticed they became one stone, after which he placed them, the rocks, as a matzeva. Last class, we learned all about the root of this word, right? Sulam mutzav alza, and God nitzav halav, right? And matzeva is a pillar, and that's exactly what it says that he did. And oil came down from heaven, and he, Jacob, anointed it, the stone, as said in Genesis 28:18. And Jacob arose early in the morning, and he took the stone that he had placed at his head, and he set it up as a monument, matzeva, vayetzek shemen al rosha, and he poured oil on top of it. What, you thought Jacob was walking around with a flask of oil? Who does that? It's not a thing, okay? They do it, but whatever. Anyway, he had nothing in his possession except the staff of Moses before it became the staff of Moses, because he was robbed by his nephew, Eliphaz. He had all a bunch of silver and gold to bring to Haran, but again, we know the story. We've been through it. What did the Holy One, blessed be he, do? He planted his right foot, regel yemin, and sunk the stone into the depth. Next class, we're going to be discussing about the foot, okay? The importance and significance of it. So just keep this in mind, and we'll move with that forward. So it says, God planted his right foot and sunk the stone in the depth. Does God have a foot? Ask a Christian, they'll tell you, yeah, sure. He's got hands and feet and, longish hair, a short, scraggly beard, blonde hair, blue eyes. Likely, right? Yeah, we know from the pictures. Wonderful. That's why it's called idolatry. Exodus 23-5 of the 10 Commandments. You shall not have other gods in my presence. You shall not make for yourself graven images or any likeness of which is in the heavens above, which is on the earth below, or it's the water beneath the earth. You shall neither prostrate yourself before them, nor worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a zealous God, who visits the iniquity of the fathers upon the sons, upon the third and fourth generation of those who hate me. And then Exodus 19:20, after the 10 Commandments, just in case, 2.2 billion people missed that, the Lord said to Moses, so you shall say to the children of Israel, you have seen that from the heavens I have spoken to you. You shall not make images of anything that is with me. Gods of silver, of gold, you shall not make for yourselves. I would love to see at that moment of truth this explanation when God says, what's up? You missed that? Okay. Anyway, the reason it is said right leg. Now I say right leg. In Hebrew, regel can mean foot or leg. Specifically, if you're referring to a foot, you say kaf regel. Just like yad is my entire arm, but kaf yad is my hand, my palm. So when it says foot, it means leg, but it also means foot. Okay? So the reason it said right leg specifically is because God is referring to the aspect of netzach, eternal, victory. That is on the sfirot. That is the right leg. He planted his right leg or right foot and sunk the stone into the depths and made it a snif for the land. Snif, that's a Hebrew word, obviously. Modern Hebrew, snif means like a branch. Not a tree branch, but like a post office or a 7-Eleven, CVS, branch, snif, whatever. But what the text is alluding to is more like a covering, a secure location, as the text continues and says, just like a man makes a snif for a dome. Therefore, it is called the foundation stone. Now, I'm not really sure why. Okay, so again, you understand what happened. The 12 rocks, I don't know how big they were, but not massive, obviously, because the altar itself was not massive. So, I don't know, whatever. Medium size, even the size of Jacob, which I don't think so, but whatever. Let's say that happened. And the oil came down from the heavens, and then it was pushed all the way down. God pushed it all the way down, deep, deep, deep into the earth. Okay? Okay. So that's what we learned that's happening. Now, I'm not sure why it's referred to in English by foundation stone. The Hebrew is called Even Hashtiyah, which literally translates to the watering stone. But, okay, if I made the title the watering stone, people have no idea what I'm talking about. So Even, obviously, is a stone, is a rock. Shtiyah, lishtot, is to drink. Lishtot. Okay? Hashtiyah is, watering. So it's literally the watering stone, meaning water comes from it to water the earth. But, so you all know what I'm talking about out there, foundation stone, but it's really watering stone. Okay, and from that spot is the umbilicus, the center of the world where God pushed it down. From that spot, the earth was stretched outward. That's the point of the earth where God started, and he just started kind of pulling everything from there. Metaphorically speaking, of course. In the Dome of the Rock today, on Temple Mount, the gold one, it's not Al-Aqsa. Al-Aqsa's the grayish, silverish one. Inside the mosque, both the former inhabitants, the Christians, and the current inhabitants, the Muslims, because before it was a mosque, it was a, Templar stronghold. They built it right there. So, and its current inhabitants, the Muslims, claim that there is the foundation stone. Now, Google it right now. Check this out. Say, right, foundation stone in the Dome of the Rock. You'll see pictures. It's a massive thing the size of a massive room, right? Okay, anyway, so that's what they're saying, that's right there. They consider it still, it's gated around, they consider it a sacred place. However, not only is it absolutely not the spot, okay, meaning that's not where the altar stood, because they, both Christians and Muslims, have no idea where the temple actually stood, but we do. They line up, they say, okay, the temple stood here because we're lining up with the city walls, and there is the gates of mercy, aka the Golden Gate, which they also invented, and therefore the temple has to stand here. No, that thing is only 450 years old. I've told you guys this before. It's the same spot as it was in First Temple and Second Temple. And the Second Temple, we're talking about 2,000 years ago. And these gates, the old city walls of Jerusalem, only 450 years old. Suleiman the Great. But furthermore, it can't possibly be the stone because God shoved it deep into the earth for a reason. Plus, it was definitely not that size. Now, if you look at the pictures, you will see that the stone they claim is a foundation stone is all crooked and chipped all over, right? Why? That's because the Crusaders chipped away at it, so, we get to take pieces of the foundation stone. Although, it was done away with, but who knows? Anyway, so upon this stone stands the sanctuary of God, says Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, as said in Genesis 28:22. This stone which I have placed as a monument shall be a house of God, and everything that you give me I will surely tithe to you. Wonderful. This stone has been sunk by God to stand beneath the Holy of Holies, as said in Masechet Yoma. So, it's very safe to say that those other religions have its location completely wrong among just about everything else. And Jacob fell on his face before the stone and prayed to the Holy One, blessed be He, and said, Master of all the worlds, Ribon kol olamim, if you return me to this place in peace, and if I return in peace to my father's house, and the Lord will be my God, it says. Jacob was referring to the land of Israel, generally speaking, which of course means his father Isaac's house, but also his heavenly Father's house, the very place where he is right now, as he did call it the house of God. So, if you return me to this place in peace, I will bring before you offerings of thanksgiving and burnt offerings, as said in verse 20. And Jacob vowed, saying, if God will be with me, and he will guard me on this way upon which I am going, and he will give me bread to eat and a garment to wear. In other words, he's going to take care of all my needs, right? Jacob swore that he would give an offering in this very place as a means to show gratitude. This we can also see in Psalms 50. Offer to God thanks and pay the Most High your vows. Zevach le'Elohim todah. Todah literally means thank you. Gratitude. Veshalem le'elyon nedarecha. And pay the Most High your vows. There, Temple Mount, he left the well, meaning the well was walking with him. Remember from the last few classes, the well was walking with him. That's where he left the well. And from there, he carried his feet. Again, feet. Vaisa Yaakov raglav. He carried his feet, and at the blink of an eye, boom, he arrived in Haran, as said in Genesis 29:1. But now listen. Now Jacob lifted his feet, and he went to the land of the people of the east. What? Alza bnei Kedem. Yes, he went to the east. Why did he leave the well? We'll start with that. Because the well is what was walking before him, as it would be the first thing to greet him, as we can see in the very next verse, in verse 2, in 29:2, Genesis 29:2. And he looked, and behold, a well in the field. So again, now Jacob lifted his feet and went to the land of the people of the east. He went to the east, and he looked, and behold, a well in the field, and behold, 3 flocks of sheep lying beside it, because from that well they would water the flocks, and a huge rock was upon the mouth of the well. Right? The question we should be asking, though, is why does it say that Jacob went to the people of the east? Why did he go east when Haran is absolutely north of his position? Right? I'm asking him this question. This is where the blink of an eye comes in, right? This is what the Torah tells us. And he looked, and behold, a well in the field. And he looked. In other words, he just started moving eastward, and boom, he was there. Jacob was walking in the wrong direction, but didn't matter. You see? Not for a second. He could have gone south, and he would have ended up north immediately. You want to know why and how these things happen? I wouldn't say immediately. It took him a few hours, but still, instead of 17 days, it's not a bad walk. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. Know him in all your ways, and he will direct your ways. Ubechol derachecha, your ways, your paths. You will know him. Vehu yeyasher ochotecha. He will straighten your ways. God will straighten your ways, not only physically, but also spiritually, and also your characteristics. When we trust in God with all our hearts, to the best of our ability, and lean not on our own understanding, to the best of our ability. We don't have to worry where we are walking. Don't be foolish. Don't go like into an obvious place of danger. Okay, that's on you. Okay, but if you just live life well and you trust God, right, with everything, you don't have to worry where you're walking because God will take us where we need to be. We just need to move. You can't just sit in one place, right? There are many people out there who are completely petrified of making the potentially wrong move. And as a result, they do nothing and go nowhere. If you're one of these people, understand this. The entire journey, it starts with Abraham, and that means to walk, to move. Go from one place to the next to the next. Look what Israel did. They did 42 stations from Egypt into Israel over the course of 40 years. You need to move. You cannot just stay where you are. If you trust God and say, listen, I'm trusting my life in you, but I need to eat, I got to get a job, I needed this, I needed that. You have to move, you have to do it. God will take care of everything else. He's the one that's going to straighten your paths. Showing us again, 1,000 times we've been through this verse, that by default our paths are crooked. His path is Haderech HaYashar. Okay? All right. So you just need to move. Remember that. So first of all, even among successful individuals, the first thing, in a very worldly manner, the first thing that you will learn is that you cannot be afraid to fail. You think the most successful people in the world today didn't fail? They will tell you they failed more than most. That's why they got to where they went, right? You cannot be afraid to fail. But if you walk like Jacob did, you won't. I know that's a tall order. No one's going to walk like Jacob is, right? But that's what we spend our lives doing, to try to walk like Jacob, like Israel walked. We strive to be the best version of ourselves we can be. And God knows that. No one, let alone God, expects you to be like any of the characters that we read in the Torah. You can't be them. They are them. They are our role models. We look at them, what they did, how they lived their lives. And we have to do the best, to the best of our ability, to try and emulate how they lived their lives. How do we learn about God? Only through these individuals. How else would you learn about God? Through his interaction with these individuals based on what they did. Does God give handouts? Where do we see that? Not in our Bible, in someone else's, sure, but not in our Torah. As a result of how God treated Jacob, based on Jacob's actions and God's kindness, chesed, our text refers us to Isaiah 5:16, which reads, "And the Lord of hosts will be exalted in judgment, and the holy God shall be hallowed with equity. Vayigva Hashem tzvaot b'mishpat, ve'el hakadosh nikdash b'tzedakah." Tzedakah, right? What is this tzedakah that God is hallowed by? Then this stone which I have placed as a monument shall be the house of God, and everything that you give me, I will surely tithe to you. Are we tithing? God starts out by giving us that which we do not deserve. That is life itself. You're here, be grateful. So then we must remember that everything that we make, by the sweat of our brow nonetheless, that we make, is what God gave us. He gave us everything. And all we have to do is give him 10% of what he gave us. It's like somebody comes to you in the street, he's like, "Hey man, what up? Okay, listen, I'll make a deal with you. I'm going to give you $100, okay? I'll give you $100. I'll give it to you in $10 bills. All you have to do, okay, what's the catch? All you have to do is give me back $10. So why don't you just give me 90? No, that's not the deal. I'll give you 100, you give me back 10. Deal? That's a pretty good deal, right? Okay, where do I sign? You see what I'm saying? Okay, you mean I already signed? Sweet. Yes, okay, so this is what's happening. And as a result of the chesed that God agreed upon and did with Jacob, and all the heavens answered and said, "Blessed are you, the Lord, the holy God. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh." And thus concludes chapter 35. That is our class for today. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful rest of the week and have a Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye.